The invitation had specified informal. On this planet, informal meant only 6 layers of ceremony instead of 12. Daniel stood at the edge of the palace garden trying to calculate whether he was underdressed, overdressed, or accidentally declaring war through fabric choice. The gravity felt lighter than Earth, by a careful margin, just enough to make every step seem optimistic. A hovering drone drifted past him and projected a polite line of text in the air. Breathe normally. The atmosphere is compatible. I am breathing normally, Daniel muttered. The drone blinked. Your heart rate disagrees. Traitor. Across the garden, the princess moved among her people with unforced ease. At first glance, she could have been human. Same posture, same expressive gaze, same quiet confidence. Only the long, elegant ears rising through her dark hair marked her as something more. They curved upward gently and shifted subtly with her attention, catching tones in conversation Daniel suspected he would never even hear. She laughed at something a counselor said. The sound carried, light but measured. Nobles formed shifting circles around her, careful not to crowd, careful not to presume. Daniel adjusted the small object in his pocket. It was ridiculous, really. An empire spanning 12-star clusters. Quantum gates anchored in orbit, warships that folded space like paper, and he had brought wood. A tall alien noble approached him, robes shimmering faintly with embedded circuitry. Human envoy, the noble said smoothly, you appear contemplative. I'm debating whether I'm about to commit a cultural misdemeanor, Daniel replied. The noble's eyes narrowed slightly. You have not yet spoken. Exactly. A faint pause, then the noble allowed a thin smile. Your species favors improvisation. We prefer to call it adaptive optimism. On our world, the noble said, optimism is scheduled. That explains the punctuality, Daniel said. The noble actually chuckled, which Daniel counted as a small diplomatic victory. Music drifted across the garden, harmonic tones generated by resonant spheres suspended overhead. They vibrated in layered frequencies, producing chords that felt almost tactile. Daniel's gaze returned to the princess. He had studied her people's customs. He had memorized greeting hierarchies, gift protocols, conversational deference structures. He had triple-checked the archive database. Unfortunately, he had focused on state banquets and throne room audiences. This gathering was in a garden. Apparently that mattered. The princess's attention shifted. One long ear angled subtly toward him before her eyes followed. She excused herself from her current circle and approached. Every step she took altered the social geometry around them. Conversations softened. Several nobles drifted closer under the pretense of casual movement. Envoy Daniel, she said, Your Highness, you look as though the gravity is heavier around you. I'm considering whether to blame your planet or your presence. Her lips curved slightly. Blame gravity, it is less politically sensitive. I appreciate the guidance. She studied him for a moment, not unkindly. Are you settling into our world? I have learned that your tea is stronger than our propulsion fuel, he said. I am adjusting. That is intentional, she replied. Weak tea suggests weak resolve. On Earth, Daniel said, weak tea suggests someone forgot it existed. One of her ears tilted back faintly. Amusement. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable but charged with awareness. Nobles nearby pretended not to watch. Daniel cleared his throat. I brought something for you. A subtle shift rippled through the nearest listeners. For me? She asked. Yes, it's small and not technologically impressive, so please calibrate expectations accordingly. She extended her hands. Daniel withdrew the object from his pocket carefully. It was a small carved piece of wood, polished smooth, shaped into a simple spiral. At its center, a faint inlaid filament of metal caught the light. It's from Earth, he said. The wood comes from the platform of our first orbital launch site. It was dismantled decades ago. I kept a fragment. I had this carved from it. He placed it in her palms. The moment the wood touched her skin, she froze, not startled. Still, her long ears stiffened, rising a fraction higher. The music faltered, not because it stopped, but because no one was listening anymore. Daniel felt it immediately, the shift, the vacuum of sound. He blinked. If this is about craftsmanship, I can explain. I am not the one who carved it. That would have been reckless. No one laughed. A guard at the perimeter straightened sharply. The princess's gaze dropped to the spiral in her hands. Her breathing slowed, controlled. Daniel's smile faded slightly. Is this inappropriate? A senior noble inhaled sharply. The princess did not look up. Why this shape? She asked quietly. It represents continuity, Daniel said. Movement that returns but never repeats exactly. We used it in early space exploration insignias. It meant stepping forward without knowing the outcome. Silence and the material, she asked. It supported our first attempt to leave our world, he said. It held weight before we knew if we could survive the sky. Her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the wood. Daniel shifted uneasily. If I've committed a terrible breach of protocol, I promise it was accidental. I checked the archives, thoroughly. A noble near the fountain made a strangled sound that might have been disbelief. The princess finally lifted her gaze to his. There was no anger there, something else. Recognition. Envoy, she said carefully, do you know what it means to offer a living crafted object in a garden assembly? Daniel's heart performed an impressive acrobatic maneuver. I'm going to guess hospitality. No one spoke, he swallowed. Not hospitality. One of her ears angled slightly toward the gathered nobles before returning to him. It is an ancient declaration, she said. Declaration, he repeated faintly. Yes. Of what? Her pause lasted just long enough for every watching courtier to feel it. Of chosen alignment, she said. Daniel stared at the spiral resting in her hands. I meant it as gratitude, he said softly, for welcoming us, for listening. Her gaze did not waver. Intent, she said, does not erase meaning. Around them, the garden remained utterly silent. Daniel forced a thin, hopeful smile. On Earth, giving someone carved would usually means you ran out of better ideas. One noble made a choking sound. Another elbowed him sharply. The princess's lips twitched despite herself. The silence did not break, but it changed. The first sound he noticed was not shouting. It was the birds. They stopped. Every silver-winged garden flyer that had been circling lazily above the crystal hedges froze midair as if someone had pressed pause on the sky. Even their anti-grav hum dimmed into a thin, embarrassed whine. Irene swallowed. I'm guessing, he said carefully, that silence isn't a good sign. Princess Lyrian did not answer. She was still holding the small object in her hands. It looked harmless. A little carved wooden charm from Earth, an old tradition from his grandmother's village. A crescent shape with a tiny inlaid stone at its center. He had thought the stone's faint bioluminescent glow would make it charming. Modest, friendly. Apparently modest and friendly had just declared something catastrophic. Her long ears, elegant, delicate, rising from her silver hair, had gone completely still. He had learned that was worse than when they twitched. Behind them, nobles in layered silk stared as if he had detonated a star. A guard dropped his spear. It clanged loudly against the stone path. No one moved to pick it up. Irene leaned slightly closer to her. So, on a scale from diplomatic incident to galactic war, where are we? Her voice came soft. You have given me a binding token. I have given you a what? A pre-bond relic. He blinked. That sounds expensive. It is not expensive, she said faintly. It is eternal. He considered that. A murmur rippled through the garden. One of the elder nobles stepped forward, robes shimmering with embedded hollow threads that displayed ancient family crests in rotating constellations. Princess, the elder said carefully, does the human understand what he has done? Irene raised a hand. Statistically, probably not. Lyrian slowly looked at him. Her eyes were not angry, they were terrified. You carved this yourself? She asked quietly. Yes, he said. Badly, I might add, that curve took me 3 tries. You infused it with your own biometric resonance. I what? The stone, she whispered. It carries your neural signature. He glanced at it. It glows because I dropped it in my ship's engine coolant by accident. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. The elder looked faint. Engine coolant, someone repeated in horror. Irene squinted. Is that bad? Lyrian let out a small sound that was dangerously close to a laugh. Our ancestral bonding crystals are activated by core-reactor energy. He stared at her, then at the charm, then back at her. You're telling me I accidentally powered a sacred relic with spaceship antifreeze? Yes, okay, he said slowly. In my defense, no one gave me a manual. The silence cracked. A few of the younger attendants covered their mouths. One guard coughed suspiciously like he was suppressing a laugh. The elder did not look amused. Princess, if you accept the token publicly, the rite initiates. And if she does, Irene asked, the elder's eyes turned to him. Then she rejects your bond before witnesses. Irene's stomach dropped. He hadn't meant to trap her. He hadn't meant to force anything. It was supposed to be a small gesture, a thank you for showing him the royal gardens. for explaining why the floating fountains sang when the wind shifted through them, for laughing at his terrible attempts to pronounce her language. Lyrian's fingers tightened slightly around the charm. The glow brightened. Oh, that couldn't be good. The air shimmered. Above them, the palace's orbiting defense lattice flickered into partial activation, thin lines of light streaking across the sky as the ancient AI registered a cultural rite in progress. Irene stared upward. Why is your planet arming itself? It is not arming, she said weakly. It is witnessing. Your planet witnesses marriages. Only royal ones. He inhaled slowly. Of course it does. The elder's voice grew firmer. Princess Lyrian. State your will. Every noble leaned forward. Even the birds seemed to lean. Lyrian looked at Irene. He expected anger or humiliation. Instead, he saw calculation and something warmer beneath it. You did not know, she said softly. No, he admitted. I just thought you might like it. Why? He blinked. Because you said your people value things made by hand, and because you looked tired during the ceremony and I thought something simple might be nice. A pause. Then quietly, no one gives the heir to the stellar accord something simple. Well, he said, managing a weak grin, there's a first time for everything. Her ears shifted slightly. Forward, interest. The elder inhaled sharply. Princess. She lifted her hand. Silence fell again. She stepped closer to Irene, close enough that he could see the faint iridescent patterns along her skin that shimmered only in certain light, proof she was not human, though she looked so much like one. You understand, she said gently, that if I close my hand around this token, it declares you my chosen. Chosen for what? He asked, her lips curved faintly. That depends how brave you are. The defense lattice pulsed brighter. Somewhere deep within the palace, ancient systems awakened. He glanced at the nobles, at the guards, at the sky that seemed to be waiting, then back at her. Well, he said, voice steadier than he felt, I did always want to see more of the galaxy. A tiny laugh escaped her before she could stop it, and then she closed her hand around the charm. The light flared. The garden erupted in overlapping gasps, system chimes, and the distant harmonic tone of the planetary AI acknowledging a bond event. Irene blinked against the brightness. When it faded, the charm was no longer wood and stone. It had transformed, threads of living crystal weaving through it, responding to her touch. He looked at it, then at her. That seems permanent. She met his gaze, no longer afraid. Yes, she said, it does. Behind them, the elder whispered to another noble. The human just initiated an interstellar alliance with a coolant-soaked carving. Irene heard that. He couldn't help it. He grinned. Next time, he murmured to Lyrian, I'm bringing flowers. Her answering smile was Lyrian's lips twitched. He means no harm. That, Irene said brightly, is still technically true. A chime sounded again. Secondary consequence detected, the AI announced. Irene froze. There's a secondary consequence. Lyrian tilted her head slightly. What consequence? Activation of the concordant trial. The entire garden inhaled sharply. Irene looked between them. Why does everything here sound like a boss level? One of the younger nobles stepped forward. Princess, the concordant trial has not been triggered in 3 centuries. Yes, Lyrian said evenly, because no heir has chosen outside the accord bloodlines in 3 centuries. Irene rubbed his face. I feel like that should have been on a sign somewhere. The AI continued, merciless. The chosen must demonstrate compatibility across cognitive, ethical, and biological thresholds. Biological? Irene repeated, Lyrian's ears angled slightly back. It does not mean what you fear. That sentence never helps. A floating drone drifted down from above, projecting shifting holographic symbols. First evaluation, the AI said. Cognitive resonance. The hologram split into 2 shimmering neural patterns, hers luminous and complex, his stubbornly human. Please place your hand upon the projection, the AI instructed. Irene hesitated. If this erases my memory of how to fly my ship, I'm filing a complaint. Just do it, Lyrian murmured. He pressed his palm into the light. There was a brief hum, then a sharp pulse. He yelped. Okay, that tingled. Her hand moved to his instinctively. The projections shifted. The 2 neural patterns flickered, then threads of light began weaving between them. The murmuring around them changed pitch. Resonance alignment at 40%, the AI announced. Is that good? Irene asked. It is unusual, Lyrian admitted. The elder stepped forward again. 40% is higher than most political unions. Irene brightened. See, we're beating arranged marriages already. A few nobles failed to suppress laughter. The AI continued. Ethical threshold test initiating. The hologram shifted into a scenario, two star systems at war over a dwindling energy source. Irene groaned. Oh no. It's a moral exam. Respond, the AI commanded. Lyrian answered first. Negotiate shared access under neutral oversight. Irene nodded. Yes, and maybe invent a better energy source so they stop fighting over crumbs. The hologram flickered. Proposed solution logged, the AI said. Feasibility improbable but innovative. I get partial credit for optimism. Irene asked. Ethical alignment at 63%. The nobles went silent. Lyrian looked at him, genuinely surprised. You did not hesitate. He shrugged. Where I'm from, we've fought enough over resources. It never ends well. Something softened in her expression. The final hologram formed. Biological compatibility assessment. Irene tensed. Define compatibility. Long-term survivability within shared environmental parameters. Oh, he said, that's less awkward than I thought. The drone emitted a scanning field. It swept over them both, paused, swept again. Cross-atmospheric adaptation possible with minimal augmentation, the AI concluded. Irene blinked. Minimal. Minor gene edits and adaptive nanotherapy. He stared at Lyrian. You're telling me we might need software updates. She smiled faintly. Everyone does eventually. The drone rose back toward the sky. Concordant trial complete, the AI announced. Bond recognized as viable. The garden erupted, some in outrage, some in astonishment, some in reluctant applause. The elder closed his eyes briefly. The human passes. Irene let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. So, no exile. No ceremonial disintegration. Not today, Lyrian said. He grinned. Excellent, I left my ship parked illegally. A ripple of laughter moved through even the sternest nobles, but one voice cut sharply through the noise. This is reckless. A tall noble stepped forward, eyes cold. The Accord will not accept a human consort so easily. Irene sighed quietly. There's always one. Lyrian's posture shifted, not frightened now but regal. The trial has spoken, she said. The trial tests compatibility, the noble snapped, not politics. Irene raised a hand again. For the record, I am very open to awkward political dinners. The noble stared at him. You joke, the noble said. Yes, Irene replied easily. Because if I don't, I might start panicking, and I'd prefer not to faint in front of orbital defense satellites. A pause, then unexpectedly, the stern noble's mouth twitched. Just slightly. The galaxy will test you, the noble warned. Irene nodded. It usually does. Lyrian looked at him carefully. You may still walk away. The bond can be dissolved before full integration. He met her gaze, and do what? He asked softly. Go back to pretending this was small. Her ears stilled again, but this time not in fear, in certainty. Above them, the defense lattice dimmed, returning to a peaceful orbit. The AI spoke one final time. Integration phase will begin at dawn. Irene blinked. There's an integration phase. Lyrian squeezed his hand. Yes, she said gently, and this is the part where things become truly interesting. He looked at the nobles, at the sky, at the charm still glowing faintly between their hands. Well, he said with a crooked smile, good thing I like interesting. Dawn arrived with a system notification. Integration phase commencing, the planetary AI announced gently. Irene groaned. I miss alarms that just beep. You may still run, Lyrian said softly. He looked at her. The glow of the bonded charm pulsed between them, steady now, no longer flaring unpredictably. It had adapted, or perhaps they had. I could, he admitted. I could get on my ship, pretend this was an interspecies misunderstanding involving decorative wood. And, he exhaled slowly, and I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed. A faint smile touched her lips. Curiosity is a dangerous trait. Humanity's defining flaw. Or strength. The garden gates opened. The council stood assembled, no longer whispering in chaos. They were composed now, formal, resigned to the inevitability of what tradition had validated. The stern noble who had opposed them stepped forward first. The concordant trial recognized viability, he said evenly. But viability does not equal stability. The accord requires assurance. Irene nodded. That seems fair. Several brows lifted at his tone. You do not argue, the noble asked. Argue about what? That your people are cautious. So are mine, we just hide it behind sarcasm. A quiet ripple of amusement moved through the assembly. The elder spoke next. The final measure is not ritual, it is intent. Lyrian stepped forward. State the test. The elder's gaze shifted to Iren. You must choose whether to anchor your life here or remain divided between worlds. A royal bond cannot exist half-present. Silence settled again. Iren felt it differently this time, not suffocating. Not hostile, just weighty. He looked at Lyrian. I have a ship, he said slowly. A crew, contracts, a life that fits inside cargo routes and repair docks. And, she asked quietly, and none of it has ever felt permanent. The charm warmed slightly. He looked up at the council. When I carved that piece of wood, he said, I didn't think about empires, I thought about a person, about someone who looked exhausted from carrying expectations no one else would touch. Lyrian's ears angled forward gently. I didn't mean to start a political earthquake, he continued. But I did mean the gesture. The stern noble studied him, meaning as insufficient. It's a start, Iren replied. Back home, we build everything important from small starts. A pause, then he reached to his wrist. He removed a thin metallic band, his ship's command key, encoded to his biometric signature. Linked to his vessel's AI to every contract and credit line he held it up. If I stay, he said carefully, I don't stay as a visitor, I stay as a partner. That means my priorities shift, permanently. The murmuring began again. Lyrian's voice was barely above a whisper. You would relinquish command. He smiled faintly. I've always wanted to try something slightly less explosive. That is not reassuring. It's growth, he said lightly. He stepped forward and placed the command band into the elder's waiting hand. Gasps echoed through the council. That device, the elder said slowly, represents your autonomy. Yes, Iren replied, and I'm not surrendering it. I'm redefining it. The planetary AI pulsed softly overhead. Gesture logged, it announced. Sacrifice acknowledged. The stern noble's expression shifted, not fully softened, but no longer sharp. You would bind your future to ours, the noble said. Iren nodded. Not because your laws forced me, not because a trial passed me, because I choose to. Lyrian stepped beside him. And I choose him, she said clearly, no fear now. No hesitation. The charm between them flared once more, but this time the light did not spike violently. It spread outward, calm and even, threading upward into the sky like a signal. The defense lattice responded, not with activation, but with resonance. A harmonic tone rolled across the planet, carrying the announcement beyond the garden, beyond the palace. Bond confirmed. Alliance voluntary. Integration complete. The elder returned the command band to Iren. Your autonomy remains yours, he said, but your declaration has been recorded across the accord. Iren blinked, so no exile. A faint smile tugged at the elder's mouth. No exile. The stern noble inclined his head slightly. The human remains. A collective exhale passed through the assembly. The younger nobles began whispering excitedly instead of anxiously. One guard muttered, he gave up a ship. Another replied, he gained a throne. Iren overheard that. He leaned toward Lyrian. For the record, I was not aiming for a throne. She smiled, good, we have enough chairs. A soft laugh escaped him. The tension that had defined the garden for days dissolved, not abruptly, but gradually, like ice under sunlight. Lyrian turned to face him fully. You understand, she said quietly, this will not be simple. When has it been? He replied, you will be judged. I already am. You will be tested. He grinned faintly. I passed the biology exam. She shook her head, laughter finally unrestrained. You are impossible. And yet, he said gently, compatible. Her hand found his again, this time not out of panic, not out of ceremony, but out of certainty. The AI spoke one final time, its voice no longer formal but almost warm. Cultural deviation registered. Long-term projections indicate adaptive societal shift. Iren raised an eyebrow. Is that good? Probability of strengthened interspecies cohesion, increasing. He nodded slowly. See, he murmured. All because of a badly carved piece of wood. Lyrian looked at him with quiet intensity. No, she said softly, because you chose to stay. He felt the truth of that settle inside him. He had arrived as a visitor,